Woodcraft, helping you make woodwork.
Inlace is a premier resin liquid. It's a little bit different from an epoxy. Inlace is a resin liquid inlay. It's a little bit different from epoxy. Usually in epoxies we have a part A and a part B, and you mix an equal amount together, and that's how we get our finished product. Now this is being a resin. It comes in a can similar to this, and what you do is you add a hardener to it by the drops, so that you do not have nowhere near a 50-50 mix. It's often used by a lot of wood turners and gourd makers, pool cue makers, even guitar makers use this liquid inlay. And here's just a kind of an example of what it is. And that we can pass around. This is some that was left over from a project of mine, and as you can see, like an epoxy, where epoxy is hard, this actually will flex a little bit. It will give a little bit, which makes it kind of a really nice product if you want to pass that around. It can be carved, it can be planed, it can be sanded. It does not hurt your wood tools in any sort of way, and it doesn't even load your sandpaper. When it's dry, it's non-toxic, and it's even food safe. So it's a great product that you can use in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways that I've used it is I've used it in these jewelry boxes that I've made, and I've used it as an accent piece around the edge of this black walnut. It works very well. They do have a minimum size that they like you to put it in. They say 1/8 of an inch thick and 1/8 of an inch wide is the minimum size, just to give it enough to be able to hold on to each other. A couple of these other items here are items that Bob Schmidt has graciously loaned me to use, because he's used the product before. And this is the turquoise inlay kit, which, as you can see, it's great for turning. And in this case of this bowl here, Bob kind of had like a crack, or kind of just a bad spot in the wood here that, you know, makes it a great accent to it, that adds to it. Really, really beautiful. And then Bob's also brought us this plate here, which is an example of the clear Inlace. Now Inlace comes in 10 different pre-colored kits, and also comes in a clear kit. And the clear kit, you can go and use it in this case here, and then you can embed different stones and stuff in it. They have also, Inlace also makes a lot of different products that you can use into your clear kits, into your other kits. They have nuggets, which are different colored nuggets you can put in, which they say are about the size of BBs. Then they have granules, which are about the size of sand, and they have flakes, and they have even metallic dust that you can add into it to give it that shimmery effect. There are a few things that you got to be concerned with when using Inlace. I would have mixed some up in the store and shown you guys how to use it, but this stuff is very strong smelling. It has a lot of acetone into it. So you want to use it in an extremely well ventilated area. You want to use it in pretty dry wood too. If you want to use it in wood that's less than 6 to 8% moisture, if you get wood that is too wet, when it dries, it will shrink away from the material. And any other type of oily woods like rosewoods and cocobolo and stuff, you want to wipe it with acetone first and do a sealer on it. That way it won't interact with the Inlace and will have problems sticking to the wood. Yes, exactly. You could put a shellac, yes, a no-wax shellac inside there, or a grain filler or something to seal it so it would have something to grab to. Typically when you mix this up, you add 25 to 30 drops per ounce of your hardener to 1 ounce of your Inlace. And Inlace comes with these great little cups, and they say that this is an ounce. And then you use a Dixie cup, and when you mix it, you have to mix it in either a paper container or a glass container. You can't mix it into like a little plastic cup, because of the chemicals in the Inlace will interact with the plastic and it just will not stick. It will ruin your batch. Now when you mix this up, after you've mixed your Inlace and stuff in it, you have about a 12 to 15 minute period to work with it before it starts hardening on you and going bad. Now when you mix this up, it's pretty thin. It's really great. And what I found is, like in this particular instance here, I had a rotted out spot in this board here that I put the Inlace in, and when you pour it in, it will self-level itself. And if you do not get enough in one time, you can go back and add a second coat to it, no problem, with no different problems occurring with that. So just to kind of give you an idea of what it looked like in that knot, and then in some of the cracks in there, as opposed to the other side, which was pretty cruddy. So to me, it kind of really saved this piece of wood and made it more interesting and added another dimension to it. Bob taught me a great trick about using Inlace. He says, how do you know when how much material you need to pre-mix for it? For example, in this trough that I made around this centerpiece here, he said what you would do is you would fill this trough with table salt and get it all out, and then dump it in the container, measure how much table salt that you used, and then go back through and thoroughly clean this out. That will give you a general idea of how much of the product that you need. One of these kits runs right about $30, and they have a shelf life of a year. I've been running off the same kit for almost 2 years now, and it's still working fine for me. What they say is that you not want to store it in any temperatures higher than 72 degrees, and that when you are done with it, that you thoroughly clean the lip of the can, which I didn't do in this case here, so it gets a really good seal back on it. And then what I also like to do is I also like to put it inside of a plastic bag and seal it up, and I store it in my basement, which is nice and cool out of the way. They do also make products, when you're turning with it, it's a little bit too thin sometimes to, say, put in a rounded edge like Bob's bowl here or inside here, and you need to thicken it up a little bit. They make a product that they call Thicken. And if I grab the right stuff here it is. And just a little bit of thicken in it helps change the viscosity to get it to a more thicker consistency, so you can put it into odder shapes where it's not going to flow or anything where you need it. And then this stuff can be sanded. They recommend that you sand it to finer than, typically when I sand stuff, I go to 220, and then I usually call it good. Sometimes I go a little bit finer. They recommend that you sand clear to 12,000 grit. Now, if you are not going to put a top coat or a finish on it, they do make polishes. They make 2 different polishes and a buffing compound that they say you use on a little small buffer, like a little Dremel tool with a little felt pad on it, and they say it will shine right up. Now, I have yet to try this, but I think from what I've read and stuff, it's going to be really cool. It makes it really shine, get really bright and shiny. The clear Inlace, not only can you add chunks and granules to it, you can dye it. They make several different kinds of dyes and custom colors that you can make up your own recipe and get to a certain color you want if it's not coming in any of the colors that you're looking for. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of rambling on a little bit here. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. It will die down a little bit. I usually let mine dry overnight. They say 12 hours before you really can do it. You can actually take this stuff make your own mold and turn it on a lathe. That's how flexible and stuff it is. But they say 12 to 14 hours. I recommend you use it in a very well ventilated area, and that when you sand with this, I would use a mask, just protection. I found that there's a lot of acetone into it, so it's pretty strong smelling stuff. Anybody else have another question? Yes, sir.
When you use that with a dust or a powder, like say for instance that CA glue?
Well, the copper, the dust, it gives it what they call a shimmery effect, a shiny effect. That I don't know if you would really get if you used a CA glue with it. You know, this gives it almost like a metallic look to it. Well, that I would depend upon what my project was on. In my projects, on wood products, I typically only go down to 220 or sometimes up to 400 grit before I go to a top coat. Now, if you're doing it afterwards and after your project is all done and you did the inlay separate and you wanted it to really pop and shine, you could go to a 12,000 and maybe possibly goes to the polishes or the buffing compounds. A lot of guys like to use the Inlace in gourds.